Now, yesterday, I think we left off talking about training. Are you an instructor?
I am.
And what courses do you teach?
I teach a variety of courses regarding gang investigation and prosecution. Two of the primary ones that I assist in instructing are the Georgia Gang Investigators Association's Basic Gang Investigator Certification and Intermediate Gang Investigator Certification courses.
And in order to develop your curriculum, do you speak with anyone to determine what information you should be including in your presentations or in your teachings?
I do.
Who do you speak with?
We often speak with officers and investigators, both those primarily assigned to investigate street gangs, but also those who are not primarily assigned to investigate street gangs. These could be patrol officers or detectives assigned to other specialized units investigating a variety of crimes.
And as a result of those conversations, have you found that there's a gap in what responding to patrol officers know about recognizing gang evidence?
Objection, Your Honor. Space hearsay. Oh.
Yeah, yes, we have.
Okay, and what is it that you've learned just in the course of gathering that information?
So really, my goal in creating the training is to identify those gaps, and we find sometimes that gap is the ability to recognize gang identifiers when seen, to understand the context of those gang identifiers, also to recognize the signs or indicators that a particular crime might relate to the gang's activities and not just be independent in nature. Those happen both at the patrol level, responding as a first responding officer to the scene of a crime, but also for investigators who are gathering information beyond that initial call that may contribute to the overall understanding of the crime itself.
And Detective Belknap, how many gang cases have you investigated over the course of your career?
I truly couldn't count the number of investigations I've been involved in, but it's certainly in the thousands.
Okay. And when you investigate gang cases of particularly confirmed gang members, do you review their criminal histories?
I do.
Why?
It can be informative, especially from the perspective of gang investigations and uncovering the patterns and practices and behaviors of a particular criminal street gang. Oftentimes we connect dots with current crimes from crimes that have happened previously.
Tennessee. Oh, sir.
And in looking at their previous history, have you uncovered that some of those confirmed gang members have previous arrests?
Yes.
And have you had uncovered that some of those confirmed gang members have prior convictions?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the distinction between the arrest and the conviction?
So arrest is the probable cause standard. It means that there is...
I reject. Oh, the objection.
So it means that we've found enough evidence to meet the first tier standard to get an arrest warrant for a particular crime. However, we must then investigate further, and then that is ultimately brought before a judge or a jury for that final standard of a conviction. For the actual conviction of a crime. So an arrest certainly does not ultimately and always end in a conviction.
And in looking at confirmed gang members, either previous arrests or convictions, do you look into the facts surrounding either the arrest or the convictions?
Yes, ma'am.
And in reviewing those cases, have you found, in some of those cases, evidence of gang involvement that may or may not have been charged?
Yes, oftentimes we do.
What's the basis of your objection, sir?
It's vague. I don't know what case
I'll sustain as to that, and you can rephrase.
Sure, Your Honor. In your experience of investigating just confirmed gang members and looking at just generally their history, have you found cases in which there were previous arrests or convictions, and you looked at the facts of those cases and determined that there was gang evidence within those cases?
I have.
Right. And in those prior cases, have the Gang Act always been charged?
It has not.
And does the fact that a gang charge was not put on those prior cases?
I'll stay in this form.
In looking at those prior cases, when you've evaluated them and looked at the evidence, what, if any, thoughts go, what if, excuse me, let me strike this. It is a bad question. Does the fact that a gang warrant was never issued for a defendant's arrest mean that it was not a gang crime?
Your Honor.
I stand the question.
What's the basis, Your Honor? That's,
It's an improper question. You know I can interrupt you at any point in time, right?
you definitely
Okay,
can. I would just
all
understand
right,
what the
so, all right, it's an improper question among many things.
Does the fact that the warrant was not, that there was no charges, mean that there was no evidence of gang involvement?
Leading question.
I stand as the form.
What, if anything, does it mean if there's gang evidence but no arrest charges?
Your Honor.
Basis.
I don't.
You have to say objections, because Ms. Weaver's taking it down, so please say objection, and then please tell me what the basis is.
Three bases. Vague, no foundation. I don't know what case we're talking about. Irrelevant.
I sustain it.
We'll come back. As a gang investigator, do you always take out gang warrants when a known gang member is alleged to have committed a crime?
An answer on yesterday.
No,
You can stay with me, that's what I'm talking about, and then I need to make a question.
And Your Honor, just,
I'm gonna overrule the objection, and please stand, and so Ms. Weaver can go ahead and get that for purposes of what she needs to do.
Helps me see who's speaking.
Okay.
and I'll repeat the question.
That's not the first time she's told all of you that, so please go ahead and do that.
As a gang investigator, do you always take out gang warrants when a known gang member is alleged to have committed a crime?
No.
Why or why not?
Gang crimes are not status offenses whereby if a gang member or an identified gang member commits a crime, it thereby is considered a gang crime. What we're investigating is whether this crime is part of the gang's activities or has some connection with the actual gang, not only with the gang member themselves.
And when you are determining to take out an additional warrant for gang activity, how do you determine if a crime is in furtherance of the gang?
Your Honor, that goes to intent.
Could you please object, Mr. Steele, and state?
That's my objection. It goes to intent.
I'm gonna overrule your objection, sir. Yes, Mr. Sharp, what's your objection? Huh?
Your Honor, he said
I'm gonna
that.
overrule your objection, sir. You can answer the question, please, if you can.
As we discussed when I was here back in November, we typically view the primary interests of the gang as being the pursuit of money, power, and respect. As we're evaluating those things, we may look at whether a particular crime has had certain impacts, including was the crime potentially committed as retaliation against another person for an insult against the gang itself or a gang member? Did the gang receive proceeds, money, something else of value from the commission of this crime? Was the crime committed in a highly visible manner such that victims or witnesses may know or be able to determine or identify that a particular gang committed this crime? Did the gang member boast or take credit for this crime, maybe on social media, as a way to enhance their own reputation or gain promotion within the gang? Was there evidence that this crime was intended to establish or maintain or reinforce or enhance the gang's reputation? Is there evidence that the gang itself is taking credit for this crime as a way to intimidate others or promote itself? All of these reasons plus others, including whether the crime was committed with other gang members in that cooperation that is a benefit provided by the gang itself. Was the crime committed within the turf or territory claimed by the gang? That's sort of their protected area whereby they use that area to commit some of their crimes. So those are some of the things that we may consider in trying to reach that conclusion.
So I want to ask you hypothetically, if an individual commits an armed robbery in broad daylight around 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they have a YSL tattoo on their face, and they rob a person without a mask with other individuals, would that be evidence or something that you consider to be in furtherance of a gang?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis, Mr. Sharp.
This is invading the province of the
I'm gonna overrule the objection, Mr. Sharp.
Additionally, Your Honor, it's a mirroring hypothetical.
It's a what hypothetical?
Mirroring hypothetical.
We're facing an improper question. Board answer.
That the state's response, is there a case law? I don't know. Is there a case law to support a mirroring hypothetical?
I'll overrule the objection, Mr. Sharp.
And may I place an objection on the record, to call for an ultimate conclusion, Your Honor.
Overrule, Mr. Matthews. Yes, yes, Mr. Steele.
Thank you, sir. Can I have a continuing objection to intent? Not beyond the ken of the jury, that's my objection.
I'll give you a continuing objection. I'm not gonna give it on that basis. Okay? All right.
Your Honor, we all have that continuing objection.
Yes, sir, you may. Okay, all right.
You may answer.
Yes, it certainly could be. And with gang identifiers, of course, we call them identifiers because the intent is for the person to be identifiable. Again, not necessarily by the police, but oftentimes by rivals, potential victims, witnesses, et cetera.
Okay. And let me ask you another hypothetical. If a person secures a location for gang members to congregate and sell drugs, but that person doesn't himself or herself get caught selling any drugs at that particular location, has that person furthered the interest of the gang by providing a location where its members can meet and sell drugs?
Objection.
Basis. I stand as to form.
Hypothetically, if a person secures a location for gang members to congregate and sell drugs, has that person furthered the interests of the gang?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Part of the foundation for being able to sell drugs is having a place to do that. A place of safety is very important to that. It's a dangerous business. And by providing that location, you've now facilitated their ability to sell with some relative safely their narcotics to earn income that supports, of course, each individual, but also the group as a whole.
Also, in your experience, does paying a bond for a fellow gang member who commits criminal acts promote or further the interests of the gang?
Certainly.
Why and how?
That's also part of that network effect. While gang members benefit individually from their crimes and from the proceeds of those crimes, there's also a collective agreement within most of our street gangs where if a particular gang member is in need of financial help because they've gotten into trouble, oftentimes been arrested for their participation in the gang's activities, that they will receive assistance from other gang members, oftentimes in the form of bond, maybe in the form of hiring legal counsel, maybe in the form of placing money on their books within the jail.
Now, how do you determine whether a crime is committed by an individual or in furtherance of the gang? How do you make that determination when you're looking at cases?
So we talked about some of those factors a few minutes ago.
You have an objection, Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Basis?
Asked and answered, A. And B, it's, I just like to continuing objection. Goes to intent. Not beyond the ken of the jury.
Not intent, sir. I'll give you a continuing objection, okay?
And the asked and answered.
All right. I'm gonna overrule the objection.
As mentioned a few minutes ago, some of the factors we consider as to whether an individual is committing a crime for the gang are going to be things like who did they commit the crime with, the location where the crime occurred, and we also look for evidence of the benefits of that crime. Is this a crime that's part of the gang's typical activities and therefore serves to maintain or enhance their reputation within the gang? Does this crime enhance their own reputation as a gang member? Are they flaunting the proceeds of these crimes on social media or some other public way? We know that they are seeking that money, power, and respect, so we're looking for those motives behind an individual crime. There's a bit of a misconception about gangs generally, and what I found in my experience and has been supported.
Hold on. I'll sustain the objection as to being non-responsive. You can ask an additional question.
Was there a second part to your question?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
So there's often a misconception about gangs generally, and the reality is that, in my experience and supported by over 100 years of social science research, is that gangs exist on a continuum from highly organized criminal enterprises to loosely organized delinquent groups. Most street gangs operate primarily as entrepreneurial opportunities for their members. Members may commit crimes that benefit them, at least in the short run individually, but they benefit from the collective of the gang in that they receive protection from rivals or enemies. They receive support in case they're in some kind of trouble based on enemies or potentially an arrest. They also benefit socially from this. Gangs certainly have a social aspect to them, and that's a big part of the cohesion of a gang and these criminal organizations. But most of them do not have structures where there's a hierarchy or a money flow necessarily from the bottom to the top. Most operate where the gang members themselves are independent actors who may specialize in specific crimes and are simply a part of this collective whole.
In your experience in investigating gang activity, does outwardly displaying or saying a particular gang's name or lingo during a crime have any bearing on whether you evaluate the crime as a gang crime?
Certainly.
Why is that?
Well, that goes back to the gang committing the crime in a highly visible manner such that a victim or witness can identify that a particular gang has committed that crime. Oftentimes, the gang crimes we're investigating may be retaliation against someone else for an insult or a slight against the gang or its members. So they'll want the other gang to know, and they need the public to know that this is retribution for that. That heads off future issues of the same kind. Also, gangs are groups where violence is rewarded, and the ability and the posturing of violence is rewarded. So by doing crimes where it's obvious that you and your gang are committing a particular violent crime is another way to enhance or grow the reputation of the gang itself.
And I want to go back to some of the tweets that we looked at yesterday from Mr. Williams. Back in
From Mr. Williams.
From the Young Thug account on Twitter.
I'll sustain the question. You can just rephrase it. Sorry.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to look back at some of the tweets from the Young Thug account on Twitter from yesterday. Back in 2011 to 2013, there were a number of symbols or identifiers that show disrespect to the Crips. In your knowledge, training experience, are you aware of members of the Crips also being members of YSL?
I am.
And do you know some of those members, who they are?
I do.
Okay, if you can name a few.
Martinez Arnold and Sergio Kitchens for two.
Now, understanding that YSL, as you define, is a hybrid gang and claims blood affiliation, based on your knowledge, training, and experience with hybrid gangs, explain to the jury how a hybrid gang can transition from the disrespect of Crips to embracing members within the gang, the members of the Crips within their gang.
So the term hybrid gang actually incorporates just this type of endeavor, just this type of group. And this term goes back over 20 years and is used to describe gangs that form from an overlap of oftentimes disparate groups, including members of rival gangs coming together within a separate group for specific intended purposes. And in many cases, what we see is that as gangs are ultimately in this pursuit of money, power, and respect, they'll leverage relationships with other gangs, even traditional rival gangs, if it suits their purposes in their pursuit of those three objectives.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did you mention specifically Martinez Arnold and Sergio Kitchens? Did either of those two individuals disavow their membership as Crips to be a member of YSL?
Nothing I'm aware of.
In your experience as an investigator or gang investigator, have you heard of the terminology trap, the trap?
I have.
And what is your understanding of the trap?
It's a place where narcotics are sold.
And in your experience as an investigator, have you encountered any such places within Atlanta used by any particular gangs in Atlanta, a particular trap?
I have.
Okay. And specifically with YSL, in your experience, have you identified a particular trap that they use?
I have.
Okay. Where's the location?
There are several locations that they use. One of them, I believe, is 2539 Browns Mill Road. They've also frequented locations at 221 Cleveland Avenue and 151 Cleveland Avenue.
And the location at 2539 Browns Mill Road, do you know if that particular location had a name?
I do.
And what is that name?
It was called the Webb.
Now, I want to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 34. And have you seen this exhibit already previously?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, in that picture, do you see the person identified as Mr. Jeffrey Williams?
I do.
All right. The individual in the back right-hand side with the jewelry on his neck, do you know who that individual is?
I do.
How do you know who that is?
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may, sir.
Let's back up. Before we get to that, I just asked you a moment ago about Browns Mill Road being called no, we'll strike that. Looking at Defense Exhibit Williams 34, the individual with the chains on in the back, do you know who that is?
I do.
And who was that?
This Demetrius Flannery Jr.
Okay. And do you know who his father is?
I do.
And who's his father?
Demetrius Flannery Sr.
And what do you know about Demetrius Flannery? Is Demetrius Flannery Sr. the founder of Black Mafia Family?
Yes.
All right. And what is Black Mafia Family?
Black Mafia Family was a street gang that was a large nationwide drug trafficking organization.
Okay. And did they have another name that they went by?
Another name?
Did they have initials? Did they go by BMF?
They did go by BMF.
And to your knowledge, did BMF, after having their drug enterprise, try to start an entertainment group or a company?
They did.
All right. And to your knowledge, what did they call that entertainment group or company?
BMF Entertainment.
And in your experience, is that uncommon for gangs to try and flip their business to make it appear legitimate?
Your Honor.
Basis, first, Mr. Steele. Basis.
Not qualified under Daubert, no notice.
Okay, overruled, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, that's called for speculation.
I'm gonna overrule the objection, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Yes, Mr. Sharp, overruled, sir.
You may answer.
Yes, other gangs have done this.
And
Your Honor.
Basis. All right, come on up.
so I want to go back to the last question. In your experience, is that uncommon for gangs to try to flip their business to make it appear legitimate?
No, it's not.
Okay, and have you seen that as a gang investigator dealing with criminal street gangs here in Atlanta?
I have.
If you can give the jury some examples of how you've seen that here with your experience here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Even just with some examples from this case, Rock Crew, Red Cartel, both tried to do the same thing, as did their rival gang, YFN.
And hypothetically, is being a rapper and a gang member mutually exclusive?
Not at all.
Is being a rapper mutually exclusive from being part of an enterprise?
It is not.
Is being a rapper mutually exclusive to being a person who commits crimes?
No.
Is being a record label and having, being a rapper and having a record label, is being a gang member and having a record label mutually exclusive?
Basis, foundation, all these parts.
I'll overrule objection, sir.
And let me ask you this, in your experience in investigating individuals who are gang members and also musical artists, are these things mutually exclusive?
They're not.
In your experience, do gang members sometimes use their money to promote the gang or recruit new members?
Absolutely. It's one of the foundational things they do.
In your experience, is it common for rappers that are affiliated with gangs to shout out their gangs in their song or in their music?
It is.
Foundation. Foundation.
I'll sustain the question.
Let me ask you this specifically as it relates to YSL. Have you heard songs by YSL members in which they shout out their gang YSL or any of the associated gangs, 30 Deep or Rock Crew?
I have.
To the form of this question, gang, YSL.
I'll overrule objection, Mr. Stewart.
I have.
In your experience, have you seen gang members have a music label or entertainment company that has the same initials as their gang?
I have.
Tell the jury how have you seen that?
So the examples I just gave, Rock Crew and Red Cartel both did this, as did their rival gang, YFN.
And what about ABG?
ABG did as well. I don't know if they ever actually had a record label themselves, but this is actually a trend for many of our gangs, including ABG. Particularly in this time period from 2010 to 2012, almost all of them would continue to use their gang name and then add entertainment at the end of it and call themselves record labels.
Your Honor, this is go to intent, is my objection.
Overrule objection, sir.
And what you've seen with other gangs here in Atlanta, is that consistent with what has occurred with YSL, the gang turned into YSL, the music label?
Basis, sir.
Not beyond the jury.
I'll overrule, sir.
It is consistent.
Court's indulgence for a moment.